So yeah, so this is what I mean by like all those little philosophical bits where you're like, but what is ascension? Now that you know, ascension is plugging yourself into the matrix. It cheapens it a little.
Mm-hmm.
Like that is the easiest form of quote unquote ascending I feel that you could put in your game. So we're back at this just before the ending point, right?
Okay, yes.
So
So now
we're
you say no.
no, not even. It is a little harder. We're what we have to do now in order to get the quote unquote good ending, which sorry, I forgot to turn the volume of this back down. Give me a little moment.
Sure.
That's much better. You'll notice that the files are called BE1 and 2 and then GE. So
Yes.
bad ending, good ending.
Yes.
So in order to demonstrate that we should go, we have to start asking it questions that the game didn't hold our hands for. So there are a couple of topics, again, I haven't played this so we can blitz through it, that you need to understand. One of them is say do. I don't know if you remember all the way back in the beginning, where Seidu says that the reason for being is to ascend, or something like that.
Mm.
It's early, but let's ask who Seidu is.
Yes.
Which we can ask, because we have... Seidu is Sethian, the government person. Leader.
Okay.
Right, ruler.
Yeah.
They, in the singular, they of thought, their thought began high time.
Began high time.
This is the part of the game where the journal stops translating anything for you.
Haha.
So, I can now tell you that what you're supposed to ask next is, what is Seidu's thought? Which makes sense. Which I'm gonna gloss high time as the good time.
Okay. Sure, a golden age.
Right. From context and from having done the bad ending, I think it's pretty clear and pretty good to say, good reasonable assumption to say that Seidu was the guy who came up with the whole Matrix shit.
Mm-hmm. Seidu's thought. Yes.
Seidu the thought is what? Seidu began me freedom, or I free. First person singular like, freedom.
Shouldn't that be like I duh freedom? Like, why isn't there a trapezoid there?
I don't know why it's a compound. It's a compound. We're gonna roll with it.
Okay.
I freedom is the end of Coneheart suffering.
Maybe it's just like personal freedom.
Which is weird, right? Anyway, we're gonna ask it what personal liberty is.
Yeah.
I don't understand. Do you mean what? Do you mean to... Sorry, what the fuck is the sentence? Do you mean to...
Oh, personal freedom means what?
Your freedom means what?
Yes.
Yes. People are not free. We remember this. This is new. Proper noun. Front. Leave. Front back is one of the quote-unquote arbitrary, or back front, which meant cycle, remember? So front time means in the future, back time means in the past. Alright, that's cool. Behind time, I think, is what they mean in the past. Although I would have been really amused if they'd used the Chinese thing of where the past is in front and the future is behind you, because you can't see the future.
Yeah.
I would have appreciated that little touch, I think, but anyway. I mean, like, that's what I mean, like, a lot of it is, you know, you can see that they're trying to take Chinese grammar, and some sort of the funkier words like the, like dui, but not necessarily the metaphors in it.
Yeah.
Or not fully. Which does leave it in it, or not coming up with new ones, or wholly new ones. That there's still sort of the like unconscious vestige of like habitual English metaphor making its way in, which is, I think, to its detriment. And
that's the hardest things to, not do when you're making a new language. That's very difficult.
Right, that's true. Anyway, so front, leave, stasis, C note, allegedly derived from the Dadic concept. So again, like, since we don't know what the Dadic concept of stasis is, and the game will not tell you, I've tried, that is when a thing is not interfered with, manifesting its essence. However, the samples that fictional linguist one recorded are self-contradictory. In practice, the word almost always means to leave something where it is, or somebody behind, etc. That should really be someone. Okay. To let alone. So the future letting alone, so the Matrix, as I will call it now, is ordering the people, is to put in place, is to command the people. I don't really like that as a way. Is to order the people.
Mm-hmm.
Me freedom, personal liberty means to front do, is to future do the Matrix.
Okay.
So the topic series you're supposed to ask is, what's the Matrix and what's front do? We're gonna ask it what the Matrix is.
Alright, that sounds very reasonable.
I mean, well, don't you want to know what the Matrix is? I want to know what the Matrix is. Where's the symbol?
Matrix is death!
The Matrix is Sethian's for the Matrix. Or the Matrix is Sethian, the front, the future leaving alone. The future leaving stasis.
Oh my god, that's just so... I don't know, what's the word for it? It's just so tautological. Like, the Matrix is Sethian's Matrix.
Yeah, like, what the fuck? We're gonna ask it again without the quote marks. It gives you, it tells me I did the syntax wrong, or it tells me I should have asked what it meant.
Yes.
Back time, in the past of humans, of beings.
Yes.
Future living alone. Sorry, that's the verb.
Yes.
The past of the past of beings, forestasist, foregrounded almost, or like led to, I don't know, their thinking, their philosophy, their thought. People thought only of their thinking. I know, like, people are trapped in their thoughts, or like people only think what they think.
Okay.
Which is tautologically, yes, true. The reason why I keep checking the journal is that if you do it, you should start getting these things that show up here. Anyway. Because if we go back to this, let's say, I'm going to say I don't want to ascend. It's called, we're moving into a new phase of the game, and it's called antagonize the computer.
I don't understand.
How about I want to go? Oh, wait. Oh, so that's I want to. So let's say I don't want to ascend. So I feel like this is where, like, suddenly you're supposed to intuit how M- works is detrimental because M- is slightly arbitrary. You don't understand ascension. I order you to review. Nah. What was the part where we asked it a question and it was like, don't you want to ascend? Here. Where we asked, what was it that we asked? We asked at this point. What was it we asked? Do you remember?
No.
Oh, I think we asked, is the Great Ascension freedom? We're gonna ask it again. Because, as it turns out, yes. Oh, wait, no, sorry. It's... rewind. to this. There we go. I forgot to append I don't understand to it. The Great Ascension is the state of freedom, blah blah blah. We've seen this before. Where is it? Yeah. So that's what we asked. I don't understand how the Great Ascension is. What was it that we asked here? I think it's we asked what is suffering, and then it gives you the is this question irrelevant. If you actually just ask the question again, it will give you an actual answer. Here's a fun one. Remember how we asked what are you?
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna ask who are you? It goes, I am no heart. I am knowledge core.
Okay.
I am I govern this place.
Mm-hmm.
If you ask, are you a computer? It goes, yes, yes.
Yes, yes.
Those are just fun Easter eggs. But yeah, I can tell you right now that the important concepts here are me, freedom, Seidu's philosophy, and front stasis. So if I go, I am me free. Or how should we? I'm gonna ask him what is Seidu's philosophy.
Right.
Because I'm trying to get it to trigger the end gamey bit. Blah 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 blah. We've had this before. This should pop up. It's weird. Anyway. Oh, we asked it what suffering was, and it kind of went, "Don't you want to ascend?" And I'm like, "Nah, bruh, we good." Oh, here we go. Suffering means not meaning heart. So cone heart is a state of meaninglessness.
As not okay.
It is to mean that meaning is irrelevant, is to mean irrelevance of life. This is like person middle is like a person's life.
Okay.
I'm going to ask it why. And I am unable to say more. What was the other one? Front do.
Yes.
I don't understand. Do you mean front do means what? Yeah, sure. People. Oh, this is new. People think the thoughts of the people of the past.
Mm-hmm.
Right, going backwards. Front do is to think something new.
Mm-hmm.
Is to do something new. So that's fun, I guess. I'm gonna say I do the new thing. Wait. I fucked up. I don't understand. Yeah, so these should pop up a thing at the bottom here. It's irritating me that it's not. Because I feel like those are the conditions that you need to trigger for to the quote-unquote good ending to happen.
Huh?
For the quote-unquote good ending to happen. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to be filthy cheaters. Because I don't have time for this. Basically. What is interesting is that you'll see that people here actually call it like the hard ending and not just the good ending. which would have been an easy way to... Anyway, you go, can I leave? Why? Oh, okay, I have to ask why can I not leave? My bad. Let's start. I
can't leave.
I can to go. That is what this is. You go to bad. Why? Oh, this is new.
This is new.
Oh, look, it's not defined. This is irritating. Seidu's thought is your imperative, we'll call it. You are unable to... What the hell is this? You not able to you go. You cannot leave.
To you go. Okay.
So this it's a sentences like this, which I feel like the CP head thing was actually really great.
Yeah.
And then you get shit like this and it just falls apart. And again, it's because I think this M dash is being asked to do too much. And as a consequence loses meaning. And it's just like, what is it doing? Everything.
It's interesting. But okay, continue.
Anyway, so you see how there's a Seidu's thought here now?
Yes.
As a note? That's what I was trying to trigger. And it's interesting to me that the symbol is never translated. Straight up don't know what it is. So now we're gonna ask what is Seidu's thought. Like we had been doing this entire time.
But now we got a flag, so...
Right, I'm a little salty. Seidu... Oh, sorry, I asked Seidu is what?
Yes.
My bad. Seidu the thinking. Which page was it? They're also not particularly grouped by anything other than sort of shape similarity. Which, when all the shapes are this confusing, isn't good. You'll also notice that these are circle symbols, these are circle symbols.
Yes.
What? Oh. I should have asked a different thing, clearly. Sirius thought is me freedom, so me freedom is a note. I'm gonna ask it what me freedom is. It's going to go, I don't understand, do you mean? And I'm gonna go, yes, thank you for correcting my syntax, robot. And it says stasis. We're going to ask it what the matrix is again. We're actually going to double check this guide because this guide does something. What does front do? It says what does front do mean, and then I think it asks what is front stasis. So really it's the same thing. We'll just do it slightly out of order. What is the matrix? The matrix is Sethian's matrix. What is the not proper noun matrix? I don't understand, do you mean? And I go, yes. And it goes the whole imprisonment of thought thing. Okay, I'll go, what does front do? And it goes, your grammar is wrong. And I go, yes it is. And it goes, it's to do the new thing. Alright, so we've finished those two, and now this guy will just say, I am be free, which is what I was trying to do, if you remember. I want to see what happens if I say, because I know for a fact there's multiple ways to get this quote-unquote good ending. I will go, I am new. What happens if I do this? It goes, I don't understand. Okay. So I'm going to do the guide thing and say, I am me free. And it goes, what? Basically. So, how are you me free? However, you are not Sethian person. Sethian demonym, see? This is what it's saying. You are incapable of front do. Which, again, weird, I don't understand why there's this oh, you are incapable of front do the Matrix!
Yes.
You front do what? So you can see Chatbot's having a bit of an existential crisis today. But I think it's important to try to pick through this and try to understand how the creator is presenting this fictional philosophy and what you're supposed to be championing. Because if the other one is championing the Matrix, you're championing not going into the Matrix.
Right.
So it basically goes, how are you front to? The guide says, and I've done it so I can verify, you can go, you can just say yes to this and it will be fine. And it will advance.
Yes.
Yeah, if you just say yes, it will advance.
Yes, I am.
Just go, yes. But I'm going to try. I had another friend who said that he managed to do it by essentially asking something along the lines of, wait, no, I'm gonna pull up that chat log. You may or may not wish to avert your eyes. You don't really have to, it's totally fine. Where are we? Yep. Where I also complained about the philosophy. Here. Until I finally said, I front think my thoughts. So that's what we're gonna do, because it's funny. Yeah?
Yeah.
I front do my thinking. Take that, Matrix robot. How do you front think your thoughts? Able to so. How are you so capable? How are you able to? That's not really...
That should definitely be some sort of compound, but I'm not sure what that means.
What on earth does able thus mean? It is a mystery.
Okay. Well, then.
Anyway, how... yes, no question. Thus... That is not a noun. That's not a noun. It can't be a subject.
I mean, such was given.
Such begins your life of meaning.
Okay, good. Yes.
How? Do you not ascend?
I know ascend. Yes.
Computer continues to freak out at you. I want for you to ascend, however, you are able to go. Do you want to go? Or it's like, yes, no, you go. Are you going?
Yeah.
Yes. It's like toodles for now. I don't know if you can hear the game music or not.
I can't.
But I can tell you now, it's just gone from something vaguely... The other path is very, like, whoa, oppressive, and this one's much more tinkly. It's also kind of bugged, secretly, so you can't actually read it. So we're gonna do this again. I think it's because they forgot to set a white background and it's black text on a transparent background. So we're just gonna do it in Paint. Unsure of yourself, you back away slowly, blah de blah de blah. You run away as you kind of like unsolvable paradox the computer such that it's sitting there going, what? See, look, on all sides from all angles the city is uniform, homogeneous. You can't tell where you are, blah blah blah. Sethian spaceport is in the middle of an opening. You get inside your ship. The chamber's depressurized. Yeah, it's a very tinkly, sort of gentle triangle piano music victory sound.
Mm-hmm.
The soundtrack. As the whole planet comes into view below you, the tension washes away. You smile, chuckling to yourself, and then you start laughing because you're like, haha, I beat the robot. Reaching orbit, you stand up, take a deep breath. But all along, the perfect blackness of the immense cosmic void was so bright, so full of stars. Ours is not a world of darkness, but of light and of fire. Allow me to contrast to you the ending of the quote-unquote bad ending. Oh, sorry, wrong program. Paint is actually better for reading this. Right, so it says... Dead at last you may now live versus ours is not a world of darkness but of light and fire.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I feel like one of these two views is being misrepresented here. Or at least clearly the author prefers one over the other.
Yes.
If the good ending, bad ending thing wasn't enough of a giveaway. So that was Sethian. Now we're going to read some developer blogs. I promise you it will be good. Because I want to look at the, oh, hey look! You looked at walls!
Yeah, walls.
And sign language, and this. I mean, it's interesting. Like, all of these are interesting, but I want to pick out... the one I read was this one here called The Individual versus the Collective, which is actually very spoilery. Here, see? Is it a land of great individuals, or is it a land of harmonious people who work in... My roommate, technically an immigrant, we'll call it very American, like, individualism. I value the concept even if America doesn't work. It's just, when I lived in China no one can become a hero. That's just not true. I gather from your silence you are reading.
Hmm.
So, I mean, like, you and I are not, quote-unquote, entirely raised in, air quotes, China. But nobody's raised in ideal version. And no one is raised in the China that these people who come in to learn Chinese and sort of, like, do a study abroad see. Because it's not a China that actually exists outside of the minds of those individuals.
Yeah.
Because the reality of that culture will always be way more complex. Like, that's just like one of those truisms of the world, you know? And, like, and I feel like this is actually indicative of, well, it explains a lot of why the philosophical stuff cheesed me off in the end, you know? Because the whole, like, Chinese/Japanese culture is very collective, Western is very individualist, is one of those dichotomies that especially East Asian scholars have picked over and sort of prodded holes in for a long time now. Not to mention actual Chinese and actual Japanese people.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's not how the societies work. And to think of them in such broad strokes is really reductive. And then you stumble face first into all of the kind of philosophical landmines that this game just did. Of making the collective the matrix.
Mm-hmm.
Not a good thing. Of translating order government as tyrant. You know, or even big government as empire, actually, I would say.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
I guess, I'm sort of confused by, like, why did this Sethian leader, declare that, like, all the time for, like, new thoughts aren't happening, let's go to Matrix Land now.
Right. Again, because there isn't that lexicon, there isn't those compound words. I think it does lose a lot, ironically, in translation. Because, when you pair two fairly basic concepts together to try to have it mean a firstly very abstract concept that is highly philosophical, is very complicated, and doesn't quite map onto what I think your average layperson would understand, is asking a lot. And there's absolutely no guarantee that whatever we as players interpret, I don't know, front stasis as meaning, is what this
Mhm.
developer is interpreting front stasis as meaning. There's no, like, me freedom. What the hell is that? Cone heart. It could mean a number of things, and it's not helped by the fact that we don't have any ground to stand on for those examples. And I understand that it's meant to be the harder ending, but it does feel very much a case of, especially once it gets to the, like, how are you possible to me freedom, or like
Yeah.
how, it feels very much a case of, like, I just threw the kitchen sink at it until it let me go, you know?
I guess there's also kind of a, I don't know if this is really a useful comment, but just like, why couldn't you just leave anyway?
Why can't you just be
Like,
like, peace, I don't care?
yeah, yeah,
Well, that's the other thing. The backstory is sparse enough that I don't know if you're being kept there by force, because the quote unquote good ending blurb sort of seems to imply that. That kind of like, oh,
yeah,
you're sitting there and then suddenly it depressurizes or whatnot.
yeah.
So, I mean, like, but that sentence I was highlighting that entire way through, now I'm thinking about placing that within the context of a culture that demands assimilation. I just realized that on the video it's just showing blankness because I didn't set up to capture a window. That's okay, y'all can just listen to my voice. And I can edit them in. It's fine. Um, there, I fixed it. People can see things now. But yeah, what is this? Last time I wrote this, I was thinking about assimilation and understanding new ways of thinking. Now that I'm thinking about placing that within the context that is assimilating to a culture that demands assimilation. That's kind of America, though.
Yeah, like
That's called being an immigrant.
honestly, that's just kind of called most cultures. Like
Basically,
if
all cultures require some degree of, well, any dominant culture, if you're
yeah,
trying to live in a place with a dominant culture that isn't your own, will
yeah,
require you to assimilate at least partially.
yes.
Not in the
Because
least to
it's just
speak the
part of
language.
that's just what it means to be part of a cultural institution. Like it must self-propagate. Like you have to, get people to want to be in you, because otherwise, why would it still exist?
I mean, we've seen what happens when assimilation happens forcefully. It's called colonizing and kind of, murdering the culture out of other people. Which is a little bit the Matrix. But, I don't know. It's just kind of like you don't have to go to China to have an assimilation plot.
Yeah.
Anyway, so this is what I mean by, like, I played the game and I was dissatisfied, and then I read this, and then I was a little bit like, okay, hold on, what? You know? So, onto this language and culture thing, which I haven't read, so this is going to be new ground. Um, yeah, this is fine. There's a lot of language, it's very culturally specific. And then languages, let's see. Let's see. So much language is deeply embedded into a. Well, I would agree that the same kind of film. So this is really talking about that kind of, like, I don't know, way habitual sort of like metaphor construction or idiomatic phrases, right? 身体不舒服. Chinese doesn't really have an un prefix. That's because that's not how words work in Chinese. But okay. Tell me if I'm scrolling too fast.
No.
Mm. I would also say that this, like, because I don't want to wasn't good enough is not, again, specific to China. I don't want to being an accepted excuse is very particular to a very particular form of middle class, white, male American experience.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much I don't want to counts for anything if you're like a plumber, for example.
Right. I'm thinking because women's studies, right? Like, like we teach a lot of no means no, but a lot of I don't want to is coerced into becoming maybes. Like, it's a thing that happens a lot. So
Yeah.
clearly, I don't want to is not good enough for a lot of people in American society in ways that are really dangerous. So it's not a Chinese thing.
I mean, I think the issue here is there's a slight conflation going on. Like, language is part of culture, and language tells you something about culture potentially, but just like, really, culture predominates how certain things are done in language. Like,
But just
I,
because the Chinese way of saying I'm uncomfortable is my body does not feel good does not necessarily lead to, yes, therefore Chinese people feign illness more. Or, like, I'm not really sure how this paragraph follows on.
I mean, the issue is not the issue is not feigning illness. I don't think so the issue is first, feign is a bad verb here. It is present illness, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
illness is presented as an excuse, but no one, like, I don't think Chinese people actually feign illness any more than anyone else does. But they might say that they're ill. But again, this is just like a societal nicety, which
Which
is
clearly the author is knows. We see
yeah,
the next paragraph, you know?
exactly. And they, like, like, they talk about this, and that's true, but like societal niceties are just part of how any society functions. Like, you know, as an English speaker, like, when you ask, how are you? And if someone says, oh, absolutely terrible, let me just tell you, you're like, oh God, what did I get
Yeah,
myself
like
in?
one of the first things that they teach you at an international orientation in American universities is that when Americans ask how are you, never give them a sincere answer. They don't actually care.
Yeah. It's just a societal nicety.
So here's that last paragraph, and this is how it links back to the game. Is deciding what gear you'll shift to when you read my language. Like, what I guess this is kind of like what set of cultural expectations you'll come into when you read my language.
Hmm.
What are your expectations in conversation? What is your implicit understanding of your social situation? The problem is that none of these can come into play if you simply don't have the linguistic capability to back them up. Like, if all you can construct are very simple sentences, and you also have no understanding of the culture you're from,
Yeah.
which we don't, because again, all of these references to dating and all of the sci-fi stuff, but we have no understanding. Like, it says that, like, it'll save my career, but, like, are you an archaeologist? Are you an academic? Are you an explorer? Who are you? Are you well off? Would you have been commanding a lot of prestige and respect, or are you like a nobody? You don't know. We aren't told. So all that you can do is assume who you, the player, like, pretend is basically what would I, as a person, do in this scenario, which automatically means you're going to bring in the baggage of being a human from Earth into this situation, if nothing else.
Mm.
And then, of course, we know nothing about Sethian social niceties. Like, I
Yeah.
don't
It's
know. Maybe I don't want to ascend is the equivalent of going, I don't feel so good. Like, I don't like, and it's a robot. Am I supposed to be polite to the computer? I mean, clearly
that's a
not, because that's how you get the good ending. But, but yeah, I don't know. I'm being very harsh, but I care a lot about language. I care a lot about culture, and it is one of my pet peeves when people assume that language can tell you something definitively all of the time about culture,
hmm.
when it's so much more complicated and beautiful than that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so walls is fun. But again, Walls has a lot of problems. One of the things in that conlang class, right, was that we had to do on the regular was like pick a feature from the World Atlas of Language Structures, criticize the hell out of it. Like criticize how they present it, criticize their data size, criticize how they defined what the feature was, or whatever. Which is a good way to. So like plurality in languages. See, Chinese is set apart in English. What's interesting here is that it has a throwaway line about like classifiers in Chinese and doesn't really talk much about it. I'm like, but that's the whole. That's the whole point. You can't really talk about plural and singular in Chinese because you need to have a classifier there. It's not really how it. Anyway. Let's see. It says Chinese has no past tense whatsoever. The past is conveyed by simply including when something happened and understood implicitly. Not quite.
Well, grammatically speaking, Chinese has no past tense.
Uh-huh.
It has aspect, which talks about the completion state of an action.
I don't know if there's an understanding. I mean, also, aspect, I feel, when being taught Chinese, isn't usually taught as aspect.
Sure, people talk about it as tense, but it is definitively not tense.
Oh, yeah. No, definitely. Guo is not tense. How the hell do you describe what shi guo? Which is, to it, I have eaten in the past this thing before, but not necessarily in the... Anyway. I've experienced this in the past. That's what that indicates. It's a fun one, and I love it. Reduplication, that's fun. Let's see, it says it's quite prominent in both Chinese and ASL. But I feel like trying to compare reduplication in ASL is a bit... I don't know. But yeah, basically Walls is not infallible. Walls has issues.
Yes, well, like every database, there's, like, what are your definitions? What do you do?
What was your data set? What was your sample size?
Yeah.
Anyway, it is fun to look at, though, I will say. That's probably not true either, but okay. Just being an asshole to this person. But, so blah 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 phonetics blah blah blah. Like, okay. The vocal apparatus is probably different. Yep, that's true. So, oh, Pinker. Was it the Pinker I'm thinking of that I don't like? Could be. I'll check later. Yep, so the creation of sign language out of home sign. Yep, there's a lot of different sign languages. Yeah, sign languages are their own languages.
Yes. Oh, look, and they talk about their eyebrows too.
Yeah. Babbling in ASL, that's interesting. But, like, I don't know, like, I'm not seeing how this translated to the language that was created and presented in this game.
No, I mean, I think I don't know. I think had this been presented in our conlang class, it probably would have gotten something like a B. It has a few interesting features.
Bonus points for not basing it on an Indo-European or Romance language or Germanic language. Let's broaden that net. Narrow that net.
And it is interesting. It is interesting because, it is primarily a written language, and so there's a lot of, like, questions about that. But I think it didn't explore certain things that it did as well as it could have, such as, for example, M dash,
I feel like
such as
basically if instead of trying to turn it into a game primarily, and had it been first put through the paces of, for example, translating the Tower of Babel, translating the North Wind and the Sun, like we all had to do with our language,
mhm.
I think it would have helped a lot. Like, I really do. Like, if you just have to learn how to make basic sentences to tell a fairly simple narrative. And to do that, you actually have to develop it a fair bit.
Yeah.
And then I feel like it's from there. Okay, now that you have your language to a state where it can communicate a simple narrative, can you then kind of simplify it to a form where it might be easy for a presumably English speaker to grasp? And I think, right, knowing that it is for an English speaking audience, purposefully making it the grammar very alien is exciting, but also kind of a pitfall. Which is, I think, why the strict SVO was necessary. Because if it had actually done the Chinese thing of where the fuck did everything moving, that would have
I
been
guess.
bad.
I agree with that, but I think there are other things you could have done. Case marking is,
Actually, really helpful.
yeah, you could have done that and move things around to give the impression of extra nuance, you know?
Um,
Uh, and
we were talking about maybe not shifting everything to M dash and punctuation. Mark your cases. It's fine. Use diacritics. That is a possibility.
yeah, or you could have done some sort of odd featural slash morphosyntactic writing system where it's combinatorial, you have do or or so you have thought and then you have thought something else and the something else is both a character and it goes on to the character, but it also means object. Like because it's a writing system, you can do really anything you want. It doesn't have to correspond necessarily to anything in a spoken language. You could just create your own system. I think it was okay. There were definitely things that could have been improved about it.
All right. So the writing system, which I think we have. Well, personally, I definitely have a lot more criticisms of the writing system than anything it did with its grammar or syntax. I feel like its syntax as presented was a little bit clumsy and hampered, and we talked about all that, but it's the writing system that I think was a problem. It's just not well designed. From a game angle and from as a writing system angle. So here it says, strictly speaking, I would call it a syllabary, which in the absence of any spoken recording of this language means that it means nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know how I feel about that.
You can't intuit a thing being a syllabary unless you've ever heard it spoken.
Mm-hmm.
You just cannot, because each symbol is a unique syllable. So how are you meant to tell that it's a syllabary and not logographic or arbitrary, as we were talking about? And it says some ideographic elements like parallel lines to indicate yes and perpendicular lines to indicate no. I genuinely did not realize that at all. Like I said, Chinese doesn't really have a word for yes or a word for no, and so this is not even an issue. And often, my understanding is often, especially things as simple as agreement, the having a ideographic element kind of for those tends to not happen at all, because those aren't really the things that people record.
Yeah.
Initially, what are our earliest examples of written language? Religious purposes, so divinatory in Chinese. You get transaction records. You get laws. Those are the things that get written down. Yes and no is not necessarily important in any of these documents.
Yeah.
Numbers are. Nouns are. causal statements for punishments are yes and no, not so much. So it tends to be that yes and no, the symbols for yes and no tend to be like weird. Or come along later.
Yeah.
Yeah, so anyway, ultimately the symbols come from math out of a desire to draw on something abstract and absolute, rather than something physical and concrete as the ancients often did. I don't know why, except maybe art-lang reasons. Like, personal preference, basically. So, see, the first draws on Euclid's definitions from the beginning of elements, and the second draws on proofs. I hesitate to call it a syllabary because I never intended for pronunciations to come in.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, the association of symbol and word is arbitrary. Okay.
Well,
I
yes.
mean, it is. But, like, and like, we already talked for a long time about, like, why choosing it to base your language off geometric proofs is not a good idea. It's because that's not how people write. And, like, from a design point of view, it's really confusing.
Yeah. Like, when we had to design our writing systems, it was recommended, right, that you
Get out a
sketch them,
pen.
have someone else copy them, take that copy, have someone else copy that.
And do
Just,
it, right, and do it, like, a half dozen times.
yeah.
And see what the hell happens. And now I'm really tempted to do it with some of the symbols from this game.
It would be interesting. It would definitely change rapidly. Like, just so much detail.
Is there a field? Ah, yes, so there's all these background pictures. So, I mean, like, some of these geometrics... okay, firstly, all the rectangles and the parallelograms, anything with slants, gone. Indistinguishable. I guarantee to you.
Yeah.
Like, the diamond maybe would stay. The different kinds of triangles, if you're very lucky, you might end up with 2 different kinds of triangle, not 3.
Well, no, I mean, you could see the slanted triangle.
Yeah, but like the slant, I feel like it would probably just end up being a right angle triangle facing the other way.
Yes,
Or the right
but
angle triangle becomes a slant.
yeah.
You know? But not. But these, one, two, this square, this rectangle, and then this parallelogram and this trapezoid, just,
Oh, I think the parallelogram would definitely just become a rectangle. Like
yeah.
that just
It's not gonna happen. But I think the rest could preserve. I don't know if this would end up being filled in. Because filling in takes a long time to
Villian takes a
do.
long time. Yeah.
And I wonder if you would just end up with a different way to mark that it's filled in, like a cross in the middle or something. You know, shading. I don't know. All right, page 2 of the symbols. Sorry, that's still page 1. Oh, it's JPEG versus PNG. Okay, so this is like page 2. This is flipped for some unknown reason from what it actually ends up being. Oh, there we go. The PNG is there. So this is the version we get in the game. And like all of those circle symbols, no.
Yeah.
Like maybe you'd end up using the ones that don't have a circle as a frame for those. I can see these ones on the right surviving pretty well. Most of these would just like be gone. This definitely would not happen. This I think might stay. This I think might stay. This probably would get simplified to just a sort of diamond shape in the middle.
Yeah, yeah.
These two would be the same. No question.
Yeah.
But like, and that's as far as you can get because you start getting into anything more complicated, and it's like, what? How would you draw these?
Yeah.
You wouldn't. Like, if you had a sentence that used all 5 of these in succession.
I mean, look at how similar the third and the fourth ones look.
There is so little distinguishing those two.
Yeah.
One of the lines becomes a slant. That's basically all that's changed. Yeah. Don't give me an excuse of like a computer did it because computers don't invent languages that we know of right now. Anyway, we're not even gonna linger on this one.
Yeah.
Like, I have beef, much beef, beef. So yeah. Well, I mean, that's the other thing. You're not talking to a human. Well, you're not talking to an organic being. You're talking to a computer. More specifically, you're talking to a chatbot. So that'll complicate things. Here's the original Kickstarter page, by the way. So see, this has the backstory. That is really necessary,
Huh.
as it turns out. It's this prosperous colony founded by the Datans, hence the Datan Empire and Datic language. And then this colony starts falling into decline and fighting each other. And then the work gate goes down. That colony was called Sethian, and now you're rediscovering it. Literally just copy pasting these two paragraphs into the opening preamble would have helped so much.
Yeah, I agree.
No. So I don't know. I wonder if the blog talks about like that compound word system. Because like remember like some of the more complicated compounding that happened, like the high time and me freedom. Like what on earth is that? Still don't know what it is. I mean, you can translate it very literally as individual liberty, but that's an immensely complicated process that we should not assume Sethian has an analog for. And clearly doesn't mean individual liberty, because their idea of freedom is the Matrix.
Me freedom, yeah.
Right. So, see, it wants SVO. That makes me laugh a little.
You know, I thought that too before I learned anything about linguistics.
Right. Well, I think it's an artifact, because if you're learning Chinese as an English speaker, of course they're going to start you out on the bits where Chinese has structures that are similar to English.
Yes.
And then you kind of go deeper into it and you're like, oh, these are nothing alike, and actually it's really hard to go from one to the other. Oh, see, the like we said, like the trapezoid, makes it is preserved perfectly.
Yes. I mean, it was very clear, I think, from even just the examples given.
Right. It does sound a little bit like out of a textbook, in retrospect. It doesn't have adjectives, only state of verbs, and it's debatable. And then these other particles, so these elements of the game language, and I'm like, right. So I mean, this is what we're talking about like. So it's kind of why I think I valued having that Ling knowledge, and it's also why almost every single conlang community I've ever seen basically is like, you are going to end up learning basic linguistics whether or not you like it.
Yeah.
And in fact, you really need to, especially at least some aspects of socialing. Otherwise, you're gonna make those mistakes.
Yeah.
They're
It's
not
just
good.
Yep. I mean, it's, relexes, like very common for your first conlang. You just take your language and do it over again, but with a new sound system and slightly different syntax, and you feel good about yourself until you realize what you've done.
I mean, this does mention it's not the developer's first major conlang. Talking about Esperanto, blah blah blah. I mean, it's really good that he acknowledges language as a vessel for culture. Sometimes it isn't, and that's an issue.
Yeah, he talks about polysynthetic. That's very very popular, actually.
Yeah. Having that kind of list. I mean, I mean, my first conlang was an absurdly agglutinative language because it was funny. So, I don't necessarily think that having a very agglutinative or like this very clumpy language is necessarily hard to learn.
No. Well,
I feel like
fusional,
What?
fusional is complicated, right? Synthetic is not necessarily complicated at all. And
Isolating is also really has the potential to be absurdly complicated
yeah,
because so much of it depends on your understanding a lot of other things that aren't marked, which is
yeah,
one of the problems we had when we were trying to do on-the-fly translation of pretty simple sentences in the game.
yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, like, I also totally understand why there's no recordings in the game, because it's mildly embarrassing. It also takes a long, long time, you know?
Yeah, it does.
Interesting consonant system, though. This is real interesting. Uh, I mean, this didn't make into the game, so I really shouldn't criticize it based on this, but like for the conlang, this is quite interesting because again, the conlang I did was also really reductive phonetically. I mean, you and I sat down with a list of all of the phonemes for English and went like, how many of these can I slash?
Yeah.
And then which one do I really want to put in? And that's the one I really want in there. So yeah. Huh. It said no, you can make this vowel system more simple. You can just have 3. Actually, you can just have 2.
Just 2.
Just put 2 in it. It's fun. This is fine.
All right, I should be going.
Well, thank you for joining me on this crazy ride. Do you have any concluding thoughts?
I think if you do release this, you should probably like write it up instead of just releasing
I mean,
this.
I'm probably actually going to write it up. The recording is more for my benefit than anything. But I
Yeah.
know a couple of people who are like casually interested in Link who might be interested to hear kind of what we were saying as we were playing it through.
Oh my god, but it's like 3 hours long. Who has the time to listen to 3 hours?
Well, I listened to my friends playing D&D for about 6 hours today, so like going through their backlogs.
Okay. Well,
So what happens?
okay. Okay.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I'm still feeling kind of ambivalent. Like I don't want to be too mean because I really, for all of the like asshole snarkiness, it's like I really do appreciate the ambition and sort of the scope of this.
Mm-hmm.
And I do really appreciate and I really enjoy this concept of like you learn and translate a language, so that's what you do.
Yeah.
I just really don't like the subject matter it's chosen.
Yeah, I mean, but yeah, it's like a philosophical disagreement, which I share, I do share, and then the, I guess like an issue about like if it were like a really complicated language. So, for example, I've been working on the conlang recently.
I should be working on my second one too. Keep going.
So this conlang is just it would be incredibly difficult for someone to learn. And that was part of my design goal. No, I mean, really, the design goal was make something that has a really complicated morphology. But, like, if it's not spelled out for you, I think it would take a really long time for someone to figure it out. Especially if you had to start typing in it, if you had to, like, give back, like, real responses.
Mm-hmm.
I made it about as complicated as real life languages can get, at least in certain aspects. So it would just be hard to make something like really faithful to real life and also actually something that normal people could play. Like it would be probably something that like linguists would really want to play,
Right.
They'd like really interested. But that's
At that
such
point, you may as well just hand them an unglossed translation of a thing and go have fun.
Yeah, actually though.
That is probably the linguist equivalent of this game. Because I remember when I was playing, I was joking that it should have a linguist mode where it's just like, let me drop a gloss, let me drop some symbols, and let me drop some text. Have fun matching them up. Um, and I live for these long, complicated paragraphs of like complex sentence structure. Um, but I think given the scope of this work and the subject matter that the developer wanted to tangle with, I don't really know if this setting and I mean, okay, like, you know what, you can set your language anywhere, you can set your game anywhere, but I don't know if this particular focus is the best thing to do for an easy-to-learn conlang. I'm personally of the thought that involving it with more concrete physical nouns and less abstractness would actually have made it much, much easier to pick up and learn.
I think so. I mean,
Because
you know,
nobody starts off a language lesson by go, all right, sit down, we're going to teach you philosophy on week 5.
right. I mean, the standard, procedure when encountering a new language is the Swadesh list, right? Like
Uh,
here are 100 to 300 words that almost every single language has. Let's just figure out what these words are. And
Oops, I spelled it wrong. I'm googling Swedish list because it's still being recorded. But yeah, basically, right? It's historical comparative linguistics. It's just like here, basically every language has some form of these words, and it's like super simple things like you, I, we, this, that,
yeah,
who,
right.
man, woman, teeth,
And
tongue,
you'll notice
stone.
that, like, Sethian involved very, very few of these words.
Well, or was super ambiguous. It had like person. It had all, but not necessarily all of a number, just all. It had say.
Yeah,
It see, I mean, even of the verbs, right? The Swedish list I'm looking, which is just the one on Wikipedia, has like walk, come, lie, sit, stand, hear, see, know, and that I don't even know if like to know was in there. I don't think we ever encountered a verb that meant to know. We had to understand as part of a compound, but not to know. We
yeah,
had to mean, we didn't have to know.
yeah.
Which is odd. Well, we do have new, we do have good. We don't have bad. I don't think bad is on this list, though.
No, it isn't.
Yeah. Alright. Claw or nail. Right, like, so, I mean, so many of these are like body parts. Hearts in there, hearts in both. But there is a reason you don't start off with philosophy. It's because it's so hard to pin down, especially when it's so culturally conditioned.
Yeah.
Like no.
Government.
It's like the things you want to ground your language in and make it easier to learn. Fire. It turns out fire, body parts, some animals, basic verbs. And those things are just really immediately analogous. Very easy to grasp. Yeah, like maybe it's in sci-fi land and maybe some of these wouldn't apply, but equally a lot of them, as far as we can tell, do for organic beings that want to express things.
Yeah.
So maybe start there. So yeah, I guess concept is fantastic. Maybe don't start with philosophy though. Like, if it was something like reconstruct what happened at this place where a lot of people are dead, that could have been a thing. Like, maybe it had been a plague. Maybe it was, like, weird... Like, I don't know. Maybe it's, like,
Yeah.
tragic decline. There's a lot of things you could have done that wasn't, like, we decided to plug ourselves into the Matrix.
Yeah. I mean, a setting I think where you could have easily had a lot of these things would have been if you're, I mean, yeah, just like everyone's dead of the plague. There's a bunch of journals lying around, so time to read some journals.
And try not to die of the plague. Or, hell, you wouldn't even necessarily need that concept of, you're trying to avoid the plague. You can just be like, find out what the hell happened. I
Yeah.
feel like that's appropriate. Or I've actually been dying for years to be like, somebody should make a game about contact with another human civilization where you are on equal grounds and you're just trying to figure out what the other person wants from you, and you don't speak the same language. Like, that is it. Like, you don't know if they want to just go over, if they want food, if they want water from you, if they want you please to not kill them, or if they're going, I'm going to shoot you.
Yeah.
Just that. And that can be enormously complicated. And full of that delicious cultural difference. But anyway, I won't keep you anymore. Thank you for joining me on this wild ride.
Yes.
And sharing your Ling knowledge as a Ling person.
Yes. I'm sad I couldn't share any more of my actual specialized knowledge. I could just give general facts most of the time.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, phonology just doesn't come into this, but...
Be right, because it's not spoken, it's all written. But if I write something up, I will send it along to you.
Alright, yeah.
Before I publish it or whatever, so...
Cool.
Good night.
Alright, bye.